Listening on demand. Good luck.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m, I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight, Jewish students hounded by their peers.
Respecting some we're inflammatory. Yes, yes, of course you are.
I reveal that extremism is everywhere. Also,
A very good proposal was made to me by Sajid Javid, who is a colleague and a friend, and I decided I'd have merit.
how can a statue for Muslims cost £1 million? And
So you reported J.K. Rowling
I have
to the police?
reported J.K. Rowling to the police.
J.K. Rowling reported to the police for calling India Willoughby a man. Plus, I have exclusive polling. The battle of the chancellors. The people decide. On my panel is journalist Suzanne Evans. We've got Lord Bailey and ex-Labour advisor Matthew Larzer. Oh, and terrestrial telly is indoctrinating our kids.
I'm a boy, but my body's all wrong, and how am I supposed to tell my parents?
I'll help you in whatever way I can.
Not creepy at all. Get ready, Britain, here we go. You will not believe what Archbishop Justin Welby has done this time. Next.
Good evening from the newsroom. I'm Sam Francis. A quick look at the headlines at just after 9 o'clock. Government ministers are challenging Labour to set out its own funding plans after it backed the government's decision to cut national insurance. The non-dom tax status will be scrapped with the aim of raising revenue to make up for the 2p cut, though figures suggest any benefits for the taxpayer are likely to be cancelled out by an expected rise in council tax. Earlier, Jeremy Hunt told GB News that his budget is proof that the government, he says, is making their fiscal plan work.
We want to end the unfairness. The direction of travel we've gone is to reduce national insurance by 1/3. The fact that Labour are opposing this today is really because Labour don't have any plans to reduce taxation. It just sort of makes my point for me. Their plan is basically that tax should remain at its current levels. We say we don't have to accept the status quo. If you make difficult decisions, if you stick to our plan for the economy that's seen inflation falling and growth starting to rise, we can bring down the tax burden.
News in from Kyiv tonight, where the UK has pledged a further £125 million of military support to Ukraine in a major move against Putin's invasion. Our Home and Security editor Mark White joined me earlier with more on what that announcement tonight will mean for Ukraine's war efforts.
extra package announced by Grant Shapps on a visit to Ukraine is very significant. Hundreds of pounds and millions of pounds in extra commitment from the UK to provide 10,000 military drones. Now, the vast majority will be first-person view drones, FPV drones, which can loiter over the battle space and drop their munitions on Russian tanks and artillery. But it will also provide 1,000 new one-way attack drones. In addition to that, more maritime attack drones.
Formula One team principal Christian Horner has called for an end to the intrusion into his personal life. That comes as his accuser, a female employee of Red Bull Racing, has today been suspended on full pay following the team's investigation into allegations he made inappropriate moves. Those claims against him, though, have now been dropped, and the 50-year-old says he wants to draw a line and focus on Formula One racing. And finally to the US, where Joe Biden is set to announce an emergency mission to build a temporary port in Gaza so that humanitarian aid can be shipped into the region. The president will make that announcement in his State of the Union speech later tonight. It's also reported he will use his fourth address to dispel any concerns about his age and highlight the difference between his track record and that of his likely opponent, Donald Trump. Those are the headlines. For more, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code there on your screen. Or if you're listening on radio, go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome along. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has got more front than Southend. He's playing the victim. One of the asylum seekers that Justin Welby's church reportedly vouched for tried to blow himself up surrounded by pregnant women and newborn babies in Liverpool. And he's the one who feels under threat, is he? Welby says that he's carrying a panic alarm. Where from? Well, the House of Lords to his chauffeur-driven car to an abbey, then to Lambeth Palace. Now, Welby may have presided over a dangerous conveyor belt of bogus asylum claims that has put every single one of us at risk. Obviously, he should never come to any harm himself, and I certainly hope he doesn't. But we should not take lectures in personal safety from a man whose organisation let at least one terrorist into Britain. The Church of England published a guide to clergy outlining to them how they could help asylum seekers beat the Home Office. Then one ex-vicar revealed that at his church there were Muslim men raking in bags of cash from other Muslim asylum seekers trying to stay in Britain. As soon as the baptism had taken place, the law firms were on the phone asking the vicars to vouch for them. 40 Bibby Stockholm migrants have apparently been baptised. There have been mass asylum seeker baptism in the sea. The vicar involved revealed most of them, and this is the shocking bit, never bothered to go to church again after they had their passport. How many dangerous, violent, threatening terrorists have wandered into Britain using Welby's church as their welcome mat? The church initially distanced themselves from any wrongdoing, but the clock is ticking now for Welby, and he knows it. They have now launched an urgent review into their asylum seeker conveyor belt, and the real comeuppance is likely to come next week when the Home Affairs Select Committee speaks to the vicar who exposed the asylum baptism scam. Justin Welby has said that MPs need to be more respectful to each other. This is the bloke who brought up the Nazis when referring to the Rwanda plan.
Rise in international human rights law grew out of the horrors of the 1940s, where a government that in 1933 in Germany had been legally and properly elected passed horrific laws that did terrible things.
I can't help but wonder if this guy is just trying to drum up sympathy before the reckoning. Cry me a river, Archbishop. A river big enough that you could baptise a fake asylum seeker in it. Let's get the thoughts of my panel. It is former UKIP Deputy Chair and political commentator Suzanne Evans. We've got Conservative peer Lord Bailey and ex-Labour advisor Matthew Larser. Suzanne, I'll start with you. Is Welby just crying crocodile tears, do we think?
Oh, my goodness, yes. I mean, you summed it up beautifully there, Patrick. You know, he lives in a palace, he works in a palace, he's scared. How does he think the rest of us feel facing this terror threat? He's been a disaster for the Church of England, I think, ever since he was appointed, really. You know, this week he's talking about people talking about hate speech. You know, last week it was he wanted £1 billion for reparations for the slave trade. Before that it was was denying, as you said, the fact that the church was facilitating illegal migration through these fake conversions. Before that, he was opposing the illegal migration bill. Before that, he was talking about Brexit being xenophobic. Let's not forget he shut the churches during COVID when most of us needed some spiritual support and some company. I think that was a shameful thing to do. He really doesn't speak for thousands of Church of England members like myself who did vote Brexit, who think we're facing a national emergency because of the troubles and the risks that uncontrolled immigration is putting us through. And we don't think money we put in our collection plate should be going to a bunch of left-wing, anti-Christian, anti-British, anti-slavery campaigners who've got this 200-year-old grievance.
Well, serious question marks as to whether he's running a church or a woke lobby group, isn't there?
Indeed.
But, Sean, I'll ask you, you know, he's saying that he's carrying a panic alarm. Has he not put us all at risk?
Look, firstly, it's a real shame that he feels like he has to carry a panic alarm, but it just shows you that where we are now with our public discourse, we cannot have any kind of disagreement because if you're not with someone, apparently it's all right to attack someone. But he has to be very careful about using the words hate speech. I personally think the definition is far too wide. If you say something to me that I don't consider hate speech, then Matthew can consider hate speech and somehow you're in trouble. I think we need to do something about that. But the most important thing is, who gets to decide what's hate speech? This sounds Orwellian to me. He's saying we should be more civil to each other, and of course that's true. But remember, he hasn't always been civil about the government. And if he needs to lead by example, you could always accuse politicians of needing to lead by example, but he probably has an even bigger example to lead by. But I go back to my point, who gets to decide what is hateful or not? If our parliamentarians cannot talk about the tough things in life, the problems this country faces, we simply won't deal with them. And if someone could say we don't like that conversation, you get into the nonsense they held on university campuses, safe space. Well, Parliament isn't a safe space. Parliament is where we deal with all of the problems and challenges this country faces.
Yeah, no, indeed. Matthew, I'll throw it to you on this one. I mean, Welby's been in hot water numerous times, whether it was standing accused of covering up some very dodgy figures in the Church of England, whether or not it's over the latest slavery issues, whether or not it's presiding over an asylum seeker fake conveyor belt issue. Surely his head's on the chopping block at some point.
Well, I think certainly his head's going to be on the chopping block, from, as Suzanne says, from a lot of ordinary members of the Church of England, because, look, what I find slightly funny about this is, yes, look, you know, using hate speech to try and close down the debate, when actually I'd say that he takes a fairly extreme position on the issue himself. I don't frankly agree with extremism on either side of the debate. I do think the debate could do with the tone going down and the substance going up, you know, the less hot air and more detail of how we stop the boats and smash the gangs and make a real change in migration in this country. But you know, I think it's a bit much for him to be on the one hand calling out other people and then him being as harsh as he is. So you know, I'd be much more prepared to listen to him if he was less absolute in saying, you know, and if the church wasn't issuing these guides. So you know, I'm slightly, you know, I'm prepared to listen, but at the moment he's putting me off.
Yeah, OK. I mean, one of the things that really wound me up was, as a journalist, we were going to him when all of this conveyor belt issue was coming out. We were going to him repeatedly. I mean, I've got the emails here. We were going to the Church of England, and it was the same thing about, it's not our responsibility, it's the Home Office, washing their hands of it. And then, lo and behold, a couple of months later, we're going to have an urgent review. We're going to have an urgent review into all of it. And you think, actually, hang on a minute, you know, there's got to be some accountability.
Well, they're losing credibility, even with people who've never been inside a church, but who do turn to the Church of England, you know, as the national church, and instead they're finding that they won't tackle their complicity.
It's the national church. It's part of our government. It's part of our structure. It's part of our democracy.
We deserve to know. I'm sorry, but ordinary citizens walking around the streets, we deserve to know how many dangerous extremists the Church of England has allowed in.
But in his defence, in the church's defence, the inquiry that they've called gives them an opportunity to answer that question.
Let's hope it does.
And I hope they do, because they've got two routes here. They can be defensive and say, nothing to see over here, Gov, and then people fill that void, or they can say, actually, mistakes have been made, or we have a different thing planned, or we acknowledge some of the problems we've had, and we're going to be part of solving them. That's a decision for him to make. But if he goes the wrong way, I feel he may put himself and the church...
Swear on the Bible, do you think, during the Home Affairs Select Committee? Swear on the Bible when he's asked these questions about, did you know that this stuff was going on? Because, you know, like I said, in the past, there's question marks as to whether or not he's been entirely truthful about what he did or didn't.
I've got to say,
dodgy members of the Church.
I'm not going to sit here and say I'm great friends with the man. We both sit in the Lords. I see him regularly.
You don't always get a hello, do you, Sean?
No, I don't always get a hello. But I'd have to say he does not strike me as a dishonest man. I think we need to give him the benefit of that.
What worries me...
Interestingly, some priests won't actually swear on the Bible, even if they're in a courtroom, on the basis that what they think is the truth might actually not be the truth. So I think it might be interesting to see whether he'd refuse that or not. But for me, your comment about him being a woke lobby group was brilliant. Why on earth doesn't he focus on spreading the gospel, on the fundamentals of the Christian faith? Since Welby's been around, the Church of England has lost around 200,000 members. That's what he should.
And I think what's interesting about his position is that it's not that it's left-wing, it's liberal with a very big L, and I think it'll be an equally big thorn in the side of a Labour government.
I just think this is so tone-deaf. People look over their shoulder a lot now when they're walking around. People feel less safe on the streets. People see things like the maternity...
Patrick, I think people want compassion.
Bomber. People see things like...
but they don't want the church to be taken for a ride. And I'd be much more prepared to listen to his compassion if they weren't being taken for a ride over this baptisms issue.
He isn't displaying compassion. What he's displaying is a liberal view of the world. If he was being a vicar on the largest stage in the way that people expect a vicar to behave, he would suffer much less criticism. But he's being political, and if you're political, you face backlashes.
I'm gonna read out a statement from Welby now. So Mr. Welby has said that he does not support open borders and agrees with the government that immigration should be cut. He says, "There's a lot of what the government says, which I entirely agree with. The boats must be stopped. We must limit access to our borders. 750,000 in any year seems to me to be far too many. As I said a couple of weeks ago, we entirely agree with the evidence. We just don't agree with the means and may well be wrong in that." That is, of course, after it emerged, he said anyway, that he carries a panic alarm with him. Do you think this is just a tactic to take the heat off him ahead of what we've got at this Home Affairs Select Committee, Suzanne?
I think it was a rather stupid thing for him to admit, actually. It's so contradictory, isn't it? On the one hand, he's trying to make up that we have to be accommodating to immigrants, we have to be accommodating to refugees, and I totally agree. Genuine refugees, absolutely yes, but people who've been vetted and checked, and we know they're not coming here with evil intent. And then he's saying he carries a panic alarm. Seems to me he's contradicting himself.
I think so. I think he needs to check his privilege to use the phrase.
I've got to say, he's worried about a right-wing threat. Maybe?
I've got to say, his statement is a reasonable place to be. There's many appear who would agree with him. But the problem is in the context of all the other things he said. And the reason why the panic alarm may be a little bit tone-deaf is because he hasn't understood the pressure that everybody else feels under. 100%. And if he did, he may have...
And all the MPs and peers who don't have a chauffeur-driven car.
People feel panic when they see their tax bills. People feel panic when a migrant hotel is plonked down the road from...
He wants to try being Jewish. If you're Jewish in London, I dare say the whole country...
panic.
You feel real panic. I have a Jewish friend, right, and I just said to him, "Why don't you come to the West End to see me?" And the phone just went quiet. And he said, "Are you kidding, Sean? There's no part of me that will ever come to the West End."
I'll tell you what, a little bit later on, I've got some absolutely shocking footage for you of essentially extremists against Jews, but... Oh, anyway, I won't tell you everything. I'll have to show it to you. But it is remarkable now how wide... Extremism is no longer a fringe issue in Britain. Anyway, still to come. £1 million has been set aside for a memorial to Muslim World War II veterans. Is this a good use of taxpayers' money, do we think? Should our government be, building religious monuments or maybe giving it to homeless veterans? Anyway, Nigel Farage joins me live to tackle all of that. But next, well... Can you believe what controversial trans activist India Willoughby has done?
So you reported J.K. Rowling
I have
to the
reported
police?
J.K. Rowling to the police.
But the Harry Potter author has hit back all guns blazing. So who are you backing? Is it Willoughby or Rowling? Amy Ansell and Ollie London are coming in for an unmissable head-to-head. I'll see you in a sec.
Mark Dolan Tonight. Weekends from 9 p.m.
Kinsey, great to have you back on the show. Now, listen, we're not slated to talk about the Prince Harry story, but I've kind of surprised a few people by suggesting that I think he should have armed royal protection when he's in Britain. What do you think?
Well, they aren't my tax dollars that are paying for Prince Harry's protection, but I agree with you. I think that he should feel safe, and he should feel safe to bring his family back to see his father if that's the case.
Well, his stepmother, Kinsey, Queen Camilla, gets a well-deserved break. Tell me more.
That's right. Queen Camilla has no engagements on her agenda this week, with the Times reporting that she will spend a few days of downtime with the king. Camilla has been working overtime to support the monarchy. Just last month, she repeatedly drove over 6 hours to a royal engagement after her flight was grounded because she reportedly did not want to let down her husband. She will resume engagements on March 11th, representing the king and leading the royal family for the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey. A source told the Times, although she was not expecting to find herself in the position of leading the family, the Queen is absolutely prepared to do whatever needs to be done for the institution. And can I just say, speaking of Harry, I think the fact that Queen Camilla is seen as leading the family is significant proof that Prince Harry would not return to temporarily support the family, because Camilla's elevated position is likely not something sitting well with him right now. He loved Queen Elizabeth II. He likely resents the idea of Queen Camilla. And we know that that's a position he felt like his mother should be in.
Most definitely. He was very nasty about Queen Camilla in his book Spare.
He was. So I imagine that the idea of her leading the family is something he has a hard time digesting.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
This is Patrick Christys Tonight. We're only on GB News. Is a statue dedicated to Muslim World War II heroes a good use of taxpayers' money? £1 million of it, by the way. Nigel Farage weighs in on that very, very soon. But first, it's time for our head-to-head. Yes, a really good one tonight. So a sensational row has broken out between J.K. Rowling and India Willoughby after the Harry Potter author branded the trans broadcaster a man. But in an interview yesterday, Willoughby revealed that she's called the police.
J.K. Rowling has definitely committed a crime. I'm legally a woman. She knows I'm a woman.
So you reported J.K. Rowling
I have
to the
reported
police?
J.K. Rowling to the police for what she said, which I don't know if that's going to be treated as a hate crime, malicious communications, but it's a cut and dried offence as far as I'm concerned.
I think as far as I'm concerned, it's the important bit there. J.K. Rowling then immediately hit back. She said, some time ago, lawyers advised me that not only did I have a clearly winnable case against India Willoughby for defamation, but that India's obsessive targeting of me over the past few years may meet the legal threshold for harassment. So, you've heard both sides. Now help me settle this. Was India Willoughby right to report J.K. Rowling to the police for calling them a man? Let me know your thoughts by emailing gbviews@gbnews.com, tweet me at gbnews, go and vote in our poll. But to debate this now, I'm joined by social commentator Amy Ansell and the influencer Ollie London. Both of you, thank you very much. Ollie, I will start with you. Was India Willoughby right to report J.K. Rowling to the police?
Absolutely not. I think it's totally farcical and a waste of police resources. You know, while J.K. Rowling is a champion for women's rights, I think India Willoughby has been nothing but a bully that has targeted J.K. Rowling over many, many years. And J.K. Rowling tweeted herself that she has grounds to sue India Willoughby for harassment. So I think, you know, India Willoughby trying to play victim. And look, the truth is not transphobic. While people can be respectful for people's identities and people do identify in different ways, that should not come at the cost of women's rights. Should not come at the cost of bullying people like J.K. Rowling, because a real hate crime is when Jewish people are attacked in central London on a weekend. A real hate crime is when a Jewish journalist is attacked in Speaker's Corner. That is a hate crime. It is not a hate crime to call a man a man.
Yeah, Amy, it's not a hate crime to call a man a man.
Well, listen, India Willoughby is legally a woman. She had gender reassignment surgery. She has her passport says she's female. Her birth certificate says she's female. This was 100% a hate crime. Just as if someone calls a black person the N-word, that's racism.
Is it the same thing, Amy?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
And worse off, I do believe that when J.K. Rowling tweeted this to her 14 million followers, she further incited hate. She further incited violence. And that's just awful. I mean,
I'm just going to, just quickly on that, Amy. Just quickly on that, Amy, because it's quite a strong accusation that she's actually incited violence. I mean, is there any proof of that?
Well, absolutely. India Willoughby is afraid for her life. She thinks she might be murdered. She further tweeted that. She's so scared. And that's not from nothing. That is from hateful tweets. That is inside. That's what I'm talking about. That's inciting violence. That's inciting hate. 14 million followers. That's so powerful, Patrick.
Ollie, is that fair enough? Or, you know, yet again, are we just dealing with feelings here?
Well, the only victim in this situation is J.K. Rowling, who has been relentlessly bullied by India Willoughby and many other trans activists simply for initially saying that biological men can't menstruate. That was her initial tweet, and she's been subjected to abuse, stalkers, harassment ever since. And I think it's really shameful for someone like India Willoughby to play the victim when we live in such a great, inclusive country. We're respectful to people regardless of their identities. Nobody has an issue as long as you're not affecting women's rights. If a biological man goes into women's space or women's sports, that is an issue. But if you're just going about your life, you're not affecting other people, nobody has an issue. And J.K. Rowling is not transphobic. She doesn't care how someone identifies. She only cares about these misogynist people like India Willoughby that are targeting women and trying to silence their voices.
OK. I mean, Amy, as I understand it, it has already been established in law that this is not a hate crime with the Maya Forstater case. Is there a school of thought that might say that India Willoughby is looking for attention?
Absolutely not. I just don't understand why J.K. Rowling can't refer to India Willoughby, who had gender reassignment surgery. She identifies as a female, and she's legally considered a female. Why won't J.K. Rowling refer to her as a woman?
Why should she have to, though, Amy?
Because she's legally a woman.
OK. So that's all that matters for you in that sense, really. It doesn't matter about biology necessarily, Amy?
Well, she has the same biological parts that I do.
Well,
she's a woman. She's legally a woman. Just like me, her birth certificate says female, her passport says female. She is a woman. She doesn't just identify as a woman.
Ollie,
she's legally a woman.
I'll bring you in on this. India Willoughby has the same biological parts as any woman.
Well, he may have chopped off his body parts, but that doesn't make him a biological woman. And while you can change a piece of paper and say that he is a woman, he simply isn't. And look, everybody's inclusive in this country. Nobody really has an issue. But when you're going around trying to take away women's rights, when you're going around harassing women, which is what India Willoughby is doing to J.K. Rowling, that is where we should draw the line. And, you know, we have to accept reality. As inclusive as we can be, a man is a man.
And what would you say, Ollie, to somebody who says, what you've said there is transphobic?
Well, I'll tell you what is transphobic and what makes life hard for actual trans people is people like India Willoughby that are constantly trying to be an oppressed minority, constantly victims. Trans people have had great rights in this country for many, many years. They've been accepted in society. However, in the last few years, people that have been trans for maybe 20, 30 years, they are having a really hard time now because these radicalised trans activists that have really destroyed their movement, they were living their life in peace. And now you have these kind of woke activists trying to make it all about them. And some trans people just want to live their lives. So people like India, I think they're causing harm to their own community.
Amy, what about all of their death threats that J.K. Rowling has had? I mean, surely she's got as much of a case against India Willoughby as anyone else, really. I mean, she's had people threatening to turn up at her house. She's had threats to burn her house down with her inside it. I mean, all of this vile, disgusting stuff. A lot of that has come from the trans community or allies.
Like I said, J.K. Rowling has 14 million followers. India Willoughby has had thousands upon thousands of death threats, of violence. I mean, like I said, she's afraid for her life. Yes, and she's afraid for her life. She actually just tweeted, I can read it to you. She
You're
says,
going to have to, because she's blocked me.
If I get murdered, you know who to blame, stochastic terrorism. This is what she's doing. This is all because J.K. Rowling can't simply refer and respect India Willoughby's sexual orientation.
OK. I'm just going to read, Ollie, I'll give you the final say on this. This is the latest from J.K. Rowling. The word transphobic, as used here, she's referring to the piece that was put out earlier on, does not mean an irrational fear or dislike of trans people. It means refusing to use gender identity ideologies, jargon, refusing to parrot slogans, refusing to accept that sex doesn't matter when it comes to sport or single-sex spaces, refusing to believe a bearded heterosexual man becomes a lesbian when he declares himself one, and refusing to believe an abusive, misogynistic male is a woman because he likes to wear mini dresses and pout in selfies. Is that offensive?
Well, look, if you want to identify as a woman, that's on you, you know. But when you're coming for women like J.K. Rowling and trying to take away their rights, trying to charge her with a hate crime. You know, J.K. Rowling is one of the UK's biggest philanthropists. She's an incredible activist, an advocate for so many people, kids, women. And it's just so wrong for India Willoughby to play victim. Yes, there are real victims of transphobia in countries and in places in the Middle East where they can get thrown off buildings, they can get stoned to death. These are real victims of transphobia. But this country, majority of people like J.K. Rowling don't care how you identify, as long as you don't come and try and take away their rights. And sadly, India and radical trans activists are desperately trying to take away women's rights in order to feed their misogynism.
Look, Amy, I absolutely would never do this seriously, by the way, so please don't take too much offence to this. But if I called you a man, right, is that a hate crime?
Yes.
Right, OK. It's a good point to leave it, I think. Thank you very much. The social commentator Amy Ansell and the influencer Ollie London. Right, so who do you agree with? Was India Willoughby right to report J.K. Rowling to the police over being called a man? Jean on X says, appalling what J.K. Rowling said about India Willoughby. Rowling needs to understand that they are virtually the same people. Interesting. Michael says the police have more important stuff to deal with than name-calling. Well, your verdict is now in. 3% of you agree that India Willoughby was right to report J.K. Rowling to the police. Yes, you heard that correctly, 3%. 97% of you say that it was the wrong thing to do. Coming up, the tax burden on the elderly is now the highest it's ever been. This really winds me up, OK? The Tories, I think, are in danger of losing, arguably, their most loyal demographic, the silver vote. Why don't they care about old people? Former government minister and political firebrand Anne Widdecombe offers her analysis. But next, on GB News earlier, Jeremy Hunt was asked, why do we need a war memorial for Muslim soldiers when they already have one for all faiths and not?
A very good proposal was made to me by Sajid Javid, who is a colleague and a friend, and I decided I'd have merit.
Well, Nigel isn't really having any of it. He will hit back. That is next. And we'll also discuss the UN's demands for Britain to bring back the ISIS bride, Shamima Begum. I'll see you in a tick.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. A few showers and a touch of frost for some of us tonight, then a mostly fine day tomorrow. At the moment, the UK is sandwiched in between low pressure around the Bay of Biscay and high pressure across Scandinavia, leading to a strengthening southeasterly flow. Through the night, we are going to see a few showers, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland. Also, some showery outbreaks for northeast England and eastern parts of Scotland. Could be a little bit of sleet or snow over the higher ground here. Elsewhere, a mostly dry picture with some clear skies, particularly towards the south of England, also western Scotland, under which we could see a touch of frost first thing on Friday morning in any sheltered rural spots. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow then, any showery outbreaks across northern areas will largely die out. So for much of the country, it will be a dry picture by the afternoon with a decent amount of sunshine across much of England, Wales and also western parts of Scotland. But that southeasterly wind will be bringing in some cloud, which is likely to linger across eastern northeastern parts, and a significant wind chill will make it feel pretty cold under that cloud too. Looking ahead to the weekend, and after a dry start for most on Saturday, a weather system pushing its way up from the southwest will lead to a fairly wet story for many of us as we go through the weekend. The rain likely to be heaviest and most frequent across southern areas. Further north, it's probably going to be a bit patchier, a bit more showery and mostly light too. Temperatures picking up on Saturday, dropping down again.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
So after his mad dash to see his father last week, Prince Harry predictably went on TV to talk about it. He gave his first interview to Good Morning America, whilst apparently being filmed by a crew that were doing a documentary on the Invictus Games. He didn't disclose his father's diagnosis, but frankly, even the fact that he was on TV talking about it was concerning. No wonder they're keeping him at arm's length. This is what he said.
How did you get the news that the king was ill?
I spoke to him.
And what did you do next?
I jumped on a plane and went to go and see him as soon as I could.
How was that visit for you emotionally?
Look, I love my family. The fact that I was able to get on a plane and go and see him and spend any time with him, I'm grateful for that.
An illness in the family can have a galvanizing or sort of reunifying effect for a family.
Absolutely.
Is that possible in this case?
Yeah, I'm sure. Throughout all these families, I see it on a day-to-day basis. The strength of the family unit coming together.
He also said that he loves his family, but then he said that he had his own family in America. So which family does he love? The late Queen's last few years of life were marred with accusations of racism, which Harry later backtracked on, claiming that they hadn't actually used the word, so inadvertently admitting to gaslighting us all. But the Sussex's stock is falling in the States, and the only thing that makes them interesting is their proximity to the royal family. And now the king is ill, Harry has even offered to muck in and take on official duties to help his father. Look, I want to see reconciliation and love and joy, but I'm afraid Meghan has yet to even speak to her father as far as we know, and Harry didn't apparently even reach out to his brother. Whilst his dad might fall for it, I doubt William will be as soft. Good luck with that, Harry.
It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News. Now, coming up, why have the Tories abandoned pensioners? But first, we've already got memorials for our Indian, Pakistani and Bangladeshi World War II heroes. But yesterday, the Chancellor sparked controversy when he announced another one for Muslim soldiers. Speaking to GB News earlier today, Jeremy Hunt defended his decision.
I think it is important to recognise the contribution of 170,000 Muslims who died defending our freedoms. We have already, as a government, supported a memorial to Sikh soldiers who died. I think it shows what unites us.
That was echoed by the chairman of the National Muslim War Memorial Trust, Mohammed Amin, who also spoke to GB News earlier today.
This memorial will serve to remind British Muslims how their ancestors fought for the crown and the state that they have in this country, which was, in one sense, purchased by their ancestors' blood. And it will also inform non-Muslim Britons just what a contribution Muslims have made to the history of our country and defending it in its time of need.
OK, I'm joined now by GB News star Nigel Farage. Nigel, well, the Chancellor thinks it's a good idea. Is it?
No, identity politics has absolutely no place
in the commemoration of our war dead. And this was all debated by men of greater vision, bigger brains, and more thought than Jeremy Hunt and Sajid Javid, frankly. Back in 1918, there was a huge national debate about this because initially we buried dead soldiers on the Western Front underneath Christian crosses. Then the debate came, do we have different crosses for officers? Do we have different memorials for those of the Sikh faith? And it was decided that actually what we should do is have equality in death. And that is where the Portland Stone headstone came from. And it doesn't matter whether you're a general, a private soldier, a Jew, a Muslim, a Christian, Victoria Cross winner, you all get exactly the same headstone, albeit different inscription, different engraving. And in every cemetery you go to in France from both wars, at the front, there is a Christian cross because the majority of people there were Christian. At the back, there is what's called the Stone of Remembrance, and carved into it is for those of all faiths and none. We thought about this over 100 years ago. We got it absolutely right. And now, because of what's happening in Britain today, Jeremy Hunt decides we'll throw that out. And think of the cenotaph, Patrick. The cenotaph is not there as a purely Christian memorial. It's there for those of all faiths and none. The homework was done on this. It was done properly. It was done well. We don't need a Conservative chancellor messing with it.
Well, £1 million is the cost of this. Have the Tories just spent £1 million on something that will give them absolutely no more votes?
It'll get them no more votes at all. It is actually of itself divisive. The whole point about those two world wars and what's come since is contributions were made by people from all over the world, from the Empire, as it was then, the Commonwealth, as we now know it, and we recognise, I mean, think how progressive we were. We were very, very progressive in 1918. We set the standard. Everybody should be treated absolutely equally. And that applies not just, frankly, to war memorials, but to everything in life. Let's start treating everybody equally.
Yeah, well, the positioning of it in the budget as well. You know, this is a massive opportunity. The Conservatives need to do something big in a budget if they have any chance whatsoever at the next general election. And Jeremy Hunt opens up. His opening act was 1 minute. Camera zooms in on Sajid Javid, by the way. There you go. Well done, Saj. Fantastic. By the way, the bloke who, if he turned the first boat back, we wouldn't be in this flipping mess, but he didn't anyway. Then we go, all right, there we go. It's 1 million quid. Here's 1 million quid for a statue. Have they got the priorities straight here? What's going on?
Well, let me tell you, I was up last night in Whitehaven in Cumbria. Michelle Dewberry and I were there doing a live show. A good-sized audience of very local people, so local that every time we mentioned the name Whitehaven, they all cheered, you know, and good for them, because they feel very ignored up there. That constituency had been Labour since 1931, since the Ramsay Mac election of that year. And it was, you know, one of the biggest red wall wins, really, was that seat. I detected in the room real anger over this particular issue, but more deeply, it was difficult to find anyone in the room who intended to vote Conservative. And they've lost it. They've lost it. They've got no sense of priorities, no courage, no principles. Yeah. And ultimately, you know, what I came away with last night, a sense of being let down, but also a sense on economics and the budget that Labour would have done almost nothing different.
Yeah, well, that's the point, isn't it? And why not? Well, because it's the OBR, it's deep state stuff. But anyway, a spokesperson for the World War Muslim Memorial Trust said the memorial will provide a positive focus, emphasising shared sacrifices, a common history and values, and a programme of education for everyone in the UK, for Muslims and non-Muslims. The memorial will be a physical reminder of how people of all faiths have, in the past, made an impact working together and can continue to do so despite the challenges that divide us in our society. Now, Nigel, second story, OK? So, the United Nations experts, I've got to look into some of these experts, by the way. One of them is a Jordanian civil servant, but anyway, we'll leave that there. Experts are demanding Britain repatriates ISIS bride Shamima Begum, claiming she was the victim of sexual exploitation. That's despite the Court of Appeal rejecting Begum's attempt to get her British citizenship back just weeks ago. And speaking exclusively to me on this programme last night, former Home Secretary Priti Patel slammed the UN.
UN are wrong on this, basically, and the UN should not be getting involved in what is a very domestic case of the United Kingdom. You know, every Home Secretary, my predecessors, you know, and those, I guess, that have followed me since have been very clear on this. That case is closed as far as we're concerned, and the evidence against it is so substantial.
Nigel, your message to the UN?
I am now thinking the same way about the UN and indeed the World Health Organization as I was about the EU. They are massively overstepping their remit. The idea about the UN was to get us together as countries to cooperate and have a forum. For them to try and dictate to us what we should do with Shamima Begum, or frankly anybody else, is way, way beyond anything any of us have ever signed up to. And ultimately, this comes back to the old question of sovereignty. Are we a self-governing nation that makes our own laws, makes our own decisions, or do we accept diktats from the UN, the WHO, or anybody else? I really, really think that if a British government walked in on 2nd Avenue to the UN and said, guys, this has all gone wrong, let's go back to basics, let's start again, I think we'd be surprised how many countries around the world would support us.
Yeah, no, indeed. And also, as well, people say we should respect the UN. I'm going to sound a bit like George Galloway here when he was talking about Rishi Sunak, you know, like he was Moses, like he's just come down with these tablets. But you know, there is a point in that. I mean, 2 out of the 3 special rapporteurs for the United Nations who've written this report, one's a Gambian lawyer, right, and the other one is a Jordanian civil servant. So, oh, sorry, right, no, that changes everything then. That absolutely. Why are these people dictating to us?
Well, that's globalism. You know, the post-war settlement was done because of the horrors of what happened in World War II. You know, we set up these institutions really as sort of safety stopgaps to try and prevent anything like what emanated from Nazi Germany. But we're now 70 years on, and through overreach and through doing their best to prove to the world that they have a purpose, they've now strayed into areas that were never intended back in 1951. It's why the whole thing needs a complete, total reset. And as far as Begum's concerned, well, Priti Patel is right. You know, we've been through an extensive process in this country. Case closed, go away.
Yeah, absolutely. Nigel, thank you very, very much. As ever, the fantastic Nigel Farage there is on fire this evening, as indeed he is every single evening. Right, OK, now it's time for the latest Great British Giveaway. Your chance to win £12,345 in cash and a whole host of seasonal treats. Here's how it all could be yours.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Well, coming up, I will play you the shocking scenes of a pro-Palestine mob besieging a Bradford kebab shop. The owner's crime? Selling Coca-Cola. So with attacks mounting, should we really believe that extremism is still a fringe issue? It's not. I'll tackle that at 10 with some more shocking video as well. But next, as pensioners are pummeled by the budget to the tune of £400, have the Tories committed an act of mass political suicide? Former Government Minister Anne Widdecombe sounds the alarm, and Widdy has some words as well of Big Brother wisdom for Kate Middleton's uncle, and I believe...
India, if you can take offence, you'll always take offence and you'll always read something into what is being said.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
Why don't you go back to reading the news instead?
Hey, all right, Anne, we'll be here in a minute.
This This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, I'm sure you have seen this video that went viral this week, and if you haven't, well, I think you're going to enjoy it. This is a firefighter leaning on a fence whilst watching a trapped driving instructor's car sink in 4 feet of floodwater. Looks very comfortable there, doesn't he? Just leaning against the fence.
Just chilling, just relaxing. Yeah, there were in fact 2 Essex fire and rescue crews, an ambulance and a police car parked near the sinking vehicle, but they wouldn't enter the water because they had to wait for specialist crews who were trained for the water depth.
Well, 2 people who weren't going to sit back and watch were these 2, Jack and Danielle Price, who took it upon themselves to rescue the submerged driver. And Danielle joins us now. Very good morning to you, Danielle, and you are a hero, an absolute hero. What happened in this video? Make sense of it for us.
So we were filming in the area for our YouTube channel, and we've seen the fire brigade come through. I was actually out at 5 o'clock in the morning with my husband, Jamie. We know it always happens there, as you can see, and it was clear. We've seen the fire brigade come through, we've followed them, and they're just standing around as if nothing's happened. In the clip, it says he's fine, he's on his phone, and then sort of walked away. But what they failed to realise is when my partner actually opened the door, as you can hear, he's on the phone to the emergency crew in panic, thinking he's going to sink. So we could not just sit there and watch. He's absolutely terrified.
Yeah, poor bloke. Well done you. Do you reckon this is health and safety gone mad?
It is, because although I do sympathise with them, they are so red-taped, but surely sort of common sense has to kick in as open the door.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News now, coming up at 10. Should we honestly believe that extremism is still just a fringe issue in Britain? I've got some astonishing video footage for you, but first, it's time for the one and only Anne Widdecombe. Now, look, pensioners have been left reeling after being entirely overlooked in Jeremy Hunt's prudent spring budget. The landmark 2p cut to national insurance does nothing to help anyone aged 66 or older, meaning that they've been denied £900 of tax giveaways in the last 6 months. Hunt also refused to cut or make changes to inheritance tax. As a result, Britain's elderly are now facing a tax burden like never before. The average income tax bill for retirees rising by more than £400 a year since the Tories came into power in 2010. Pensioners with a private retirement income equal to the state pension have seen their average tax rate almost triple from 3% to 8%. And I don't think this is fair. Anne, why are the Tories turning on older voters?
Well, heaven only knows, because, I mean, the simple fact is that some 60% of pensioners vote Tory. So the Tories are actually turning on one of the most important sources of support for them. I mean, it appears that they've just got a lemming instinct, quite honestly. Not only that, I mean, quite obviously, goodness only knows why they're doing it. It's totally chaotic, given their own self-interest. But it's also pretty cruel, because pensioners, and particularly older pensioners, can't really influence their situation. You know, they can't go out and work and say, well, I'll do an extra job or something, or I'll take a weekend job. And they do rely on what they've saved and what they've provided for themselves, and the government has taxed it and taxed it and taxed it.
Yeah, it was political suicide, though, isn't it? And also, I would argue as well, morally unconscionable. People who've paid tax all their lives, and if they've got any savings, saved up all their lives, are now being taxed on that to fund millions of young people who can't be bothered to work and millions of people who we've let into the country who don't work.
Well, yes, that sums it up, and that is why I don't expect to find pensioners voting Tory at the next election. I think they ought to look at reforms policies. They might be quite reassured.
What are those policies, out of interest?
Well, at the very least, we're going to reduce tax. Now, pensioners pay tax on their private pensions. They pay tax if they have very little above the state pension. And because of the thresholds, which have been frozen now, year after year, they're paying more and more tax. So we will certainly be doing that, and we will be looking at pensioners, because pensioners have served this country extremely well. And there's a tendency to regard them as a bit of a nuisance. You know, they impose on the health service and they impose on the social care system. Well, actually, we ought to be extremely grateful for pensioners.
Yeah, we should be. And there's a few stories going around at the moment that highlight to me how we treat our greatest generation, and all of it makes me feel deeply uncomfortable. Look, we're going to move on from that now and talk about this. The Archbishop of Wokery, some call him, Justin Welby, he's accused MPs of hate speech, right? He said that in the last few weeks it's all got too much. He hasn't named any names. He's also revealed he now carries a panic alarm. He suggests his links to his opposition for the Rwanda plan. Is he playing the victim card here, Anne, do you think? Obviously, we really hope he doesn't come to any harm. I'm not saying that. But do you think he is playing the victim card here and actually maybe he's put us at risk a bit?
Well, I mean, I don't see why he shouldn't carry a panic alarm if he's got any reason to fear a threat. But what I do take exception to is the accusation that MPs have indulged in hate speech. I mean, MPs say how they see the situation is, and if they believe that Rwanda is the solution to the immigration crisis, I don't, because it's not happening at the moment, or if they believe that the Palestine marches are out of hand, they are entitled to say so. And I think the Archbishop, I should be very careful about using phrases like hate speech. This is the leader of the established Christian church in this country. And if he doesn't know what hate is, he doesn't know the biblical definition of hate, then heaven help the rest of us.
Now, Anne, it's time for something completely different to round this hour off, OK? Your star turn on Celebrity Big Brother. You finished runner-up in the 2018 series after learning a thing or two about hair straighteners, I believe, Anne. So this year, Kate Middleton's wayward uncle Gary Goldsmith is the one causing quite a stir, and now he's called for runaway royals Harry and Meghan to lose their titles.
But for a father to see two beloved sons warring that way is heartbreaking.
I genuinely think that they should take the titles away.
Take
the titles.
Do you?
Yeah.
Should they, Anne?
Well, there may be a moral case for it, but if I were advising His Majesty, I would say don't do that. Don't escalate the situation. They're the ones causing the trouble. Let it stay the way. They're the ones indulging in what the Archbishop would doubtless call hate speech. Let it stay that way. Don't up the ante from Buckingham Palace. I just think common sense says just don't go down that particular route.
And Anne, can I just say as well, when I was totting up during the production meeting today, the amount of different star turns that you've had on a variety of different reality TV shows, we are in the presence of a genuine national treasure here, Anne. So well done, you. Thank you very much for always doing such a great job on this show as well. It is much appreciated. You take care. That is the wonderful Anne Widdecombe. Now, coming up, how has Britain really reacted to the Tory budget? Look, we don't listen to the Westminster bubble, OK? I have got new and exclusive polling that reveals the state of the nation, the true state of the nation, alongside expert pollster Matt Goodwin. Do not miss it. But next, Jewish students intimidated by a baying pro-Palestine mob at Exeter University.
You keep making some very, very interesting comments. You keep talking about intimidation. You keep talking about, you were talking about LD.
You will not believe what happens to those students next and how deep this runs right through our civil service. I've got some astonishing video footage for you. It's left one of the victims absolutely broken, and I will be chatting to you about that very, very shortly after your weather with Alex Deakin.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. A few showers and a touch of frost for some of us tonight, then a mostly fine day tomorrow. At the moment, the UK is sandwiched in between low pressure around the Bay of Biscay and high pressure across Scandinavia, leading to a strengthening southeasterly flow. Through the night, we are going to see a few showers, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland. Also, some showery outbreaks for northeast England and eastern parts of Scotland. Could be a little bit of sleet or snow over the higher ground here. Elsewhere, a mostly dry picture with some clear skies, particularly towards the south of England, also western Scotland, under which we could see a touch of frost first thing on Friday morning in any sheltered rural spots. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow then, any showery outbreaks across northern areas will largely die out. So for much of the country, it will be a dry picture by the afternoon with a decent amount of sunshine across much of England, Wales and also western parts of Scotland. But that southeasterly wind will be bringing in some cloud, which is likely to linger across eastern northeastern parts, and a significant wind chill will make it feel pretty cold under that cloud too. Looking ahead to the weekend, and after a dry start for most on Saturday, a weather system pushing its way up from the southwest will lead to a fairly wet story for many of us as we go through the weekend. The rain likely to be heaviest and most frequent across southern areas. Further north, it's probably going to be a bit patchier, a bit more showery and mostly light too. Temperatures picking up on Saturday, dropping down again.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text prize to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight, extremism is everywhere.
Inflammatory and it's wrong, but again, and it's not respecting.
So we're inflammatory.
Yes, yes, of course you are.
People hate us.
I can be in a land where I live with these people, but I have hate for them. I don't like them.
And it's in the civil service.
Stand for humanity. Stand for Palestine. Stand for George Galloway.
Also, I've got brand new and exclusive polling. Hunt versus Reeves, the battle of the chancellors. When do you want the next election? There's also tomorrow's newspaper front pages today with journalist Suzanne Evans, Lord Bailey and ex-Labour advisor Matthew Larzer. Oh, and what's wrong in this iconic scene? Leave that on there for a sec. What's wrong? OK. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. I've got astonishing video footage exposing the epidemic of extremism gripping Britain. Next.
Patrick, thanks very much. Good evening from the GB newsroom. It's just gone 10 o'clock. The top story this hour. The Prime Minister has refused to say how the government would fund a plan to abolish employee contributions to national insurance. It comes as the non-dom tax status will be scrapped with the aim of raising revenue to make up the 2% cut to national insurance. Figures suggest any benefits for the taxpayer are likely to be cancelled out, though, by the expected rise in council tax. Jeremy Hunt told GB News earlier his budget is proof that the government's fiscal plan is working.
We want to end the unfairness. The direction of travel we've gone is to reduce national insurance by 1/3. The fact that Labour are opposing this today is really because Labour don't have any plans to reduce taxation. It just sort of makes my point for me. Their plan is basically that tax should remain at its current levels. We say we don't have to accept the status quo. If you make difficult decisions, if you stick to our plan for the economy that's seen inflation falling and growth starting to rise, we can bring down the tax burden.
Well, as I mentioned in the last hour, the UK has now pledged a further £125 million of military support to Ukraine in another major move against Putin's invasion. Earlier, our Home and Security editor Mark White gave us more information on what that announcement tonight will mean for the war in Ukraine.
This extra package announced by Grant Shapps on a visit to Ukraine is very significant. Hundreds of pounds and millions of pounds in extra commitment from the UK to provide 10,000 military drones. Now, the vast majority will be first-person view drones, FPV drones, which can loiter over the battle space and drop their munitions on Russian tanks and artillery. But it will also provide 1,000 new one-way attack drones. In addition to that, more maritime attack drones.
Rishi Sunak has defended his decision not to sack Minister Michelle Donnellan, who's facing calls to resign. Her department used £15,000 of taxpayer money to settle a legal dispute over false allegations that she made against Professor Kate Sang, who she accused of supporting the Hamas terror group. When questioned by reporters earlier, the Prime Minister said he had been focused on the budget rather than removing the Science Secretary from her position. Post Office boss Nick Reed has tonight denied supplying misleading evidence to MPs relating to the company's use of non-disclosure agreements. He was accused of providing false information on at least 2 counts, with a Commons committee concluding that the Post Office's leadership is in disarray. It follows warnings from MPs that the Post Office is, they say, not fit to run any compensation schemes for victims of the Horizon IT scandal, describing efforts so far as an abject failure. Israel will be allowed to compete at this year's Eurovision Song Contest only after agreeing to change the lyrics to its song. The original song, titled October Rain, had faced controversy for allegedly referencing the Hamas attacks. Eden Golan, the Israeli entry, will now perform Hurricane at the Song Contest in Sweden this May, after amending the song to meet Eurovision's political neutrality rules. And finally, Donald Trump has blamed President Biden for what he called a horror show of illegal migration ahead of tonight's State of the Union address.
We cannot take it any longer as a country. Joe Biden's sad excuse for a State of the Union address aside, here are the facts.
In that video on his Truth Social platform, Trump labelled Biden feeble and said the current administration is led by, he said, radical left Marxists, fascists and communists. It's reported that President Biden will use his final address before the election to dispel concerns about his age and to highlight the difference between his track record and that of Donald Trump. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code there on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome along. Take a look at these disturbing scenes at Exeter University yesterday, where a baying mob of 100 pro-Palestine protesters surrounded Jewish students and hurled abuse at them. Their crime? Trying to raise awareness about anti-Semitism.
inflammatory and it's wrong, and it's not respecting.
So we're inflammatory.
Yes, yes, of course you are. You handed out a leaflet that doesn't even mention. So, look at how many of us there are. Look how many.
Take a step back. I'm just saying. You keep making some very, very interesting comments. You keep talking about intimidation. You keep talking about. You were talking about.
I will be speaking to one of the students who was attacked by that mob next. But it's not just radical students. Look who's teaching there. Professor Ilan Pape has previously said that he admires the courage of Hamas fighters, who he believes had to act, and quickly so. This guy's there, like he's teaching there. Oh, and he doesn't believe that they're a terrorist organisation. The university has since defended his right to the freedom of expression, and I bet my bottom dollar that this is a mainstream view amongst university so-called academics. Are these the views of a fringe radical, or are they held by millions of people living in Britain?
I can be in a land where I live with these people, but I have hate for them. I don't like them. I say that is, at the time that we're living in today, is very, very hard to claim that. Imposing onto you, saying that you have to accept the British values. And Muslims are being put in situations where they're asked, are you a Muslim first or are you a British first?
Yeah, but these are easy questions to answer. I'm a Muslim first. Like, what's the issue?
But that's you not being loyal to the country that you claim to be from. You see, that's what Muslims are now. By saying that statement, you're a foreigner from us now.
Muslim first, then British, hating the people they have to live amongst in Britain. I suspect these views are not that uncommon. Extreme behaviour is the new normal. Just look at what ordinary Brits had to put up with while doing their shopping in Tesco's.
Tesco is supporting genocide. Stop killing children. Enough is enough. You have a choice. Make your choice. Guys, all the genocide, please.
That was a protest over Jewish avocados. What else? Totally unhinged behaviour, isn't it? Tesco does not have blood on its hands. Nobody in this country harbours any blame for the horrific events in Gaza. We have to put a stop to this. But it's not just universities and supermarkets under attack from the mob. No, a kebab shop in Bradford was the scene of a pro-Palestine-fuelled riot. Can you guess what the owner, Salahuddin Yusuf's, crime was? No, it's not avocados this time. Something much worse. He dared to sell Coca-Cola. The same Coca-Cola company that until recently had 2 plants employing hundreds of Gazans in Gaza. Mr. Yusuf, who sustained a bruised lip in the melee, even had a Free Palestine poster in his window. Look at the state of this. This is just a kebab shop in Bradford. They're just beating it. Why? For what? Look at him. He's getting battered in the face there. Seriously, nothing will be good enough for this lot. Pro-Palestine sticker in the flipping window, and they're battering him because he's selling Coca-Cola. It's nuts. And today, it emerged that the bloke in charge of diversity at the Department for Work and Pensions went out campaigning for George Galloway in Rochdale.
Stand for humanity. Stand for Palestine. Stand for George Galloway.
That's a civil servant. They're in charge of diversity at the Department for Work and Pensions, campaigning for a party whose deputy leader was ousted from the Labour Party following anti-Semitic remarks. Radical extremist views are not on the fringes anymore. The mob are now disrupting our lives, intimidating Parliament, being openly racist and destroying livelihoods. These people will not stop until they've got what they want, which is the complete destruction of our way of life and the total submission to theirs. That is extremism. Let's stop calling it what it is. And in the past hour, counter-extremism czar Robin Simcox has warned in The Telegraph of a permissive environment for radicalisation developing in the UK. Mr Simcox warns that pro-Palestinian protests are turning London into a no-go zone for Jews, warning that extremist groups have gone unchallenged for too long. Look, this is the government's current definition of extremism. Vocal or active opposition to fundamental British values, including democracy, the rule of law, individual liberty, and mutual respect and tolerance of different faiths and beliefs. So may I just remind you of this?
I can be in a land where I live with these people, but I have hate for them. I don't like them.
Lovely. I'm joined now by Rojin Sena Kante, who was one of the Jewish students who was attacked while raising awareness for anti-Semitism at Exeter University yesterday. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you're OK, first and foremost. Could you just explain exactly what happened to you, please? Because I'm not sure that clips there actually do it justice.
Yeah, hello. Thank you, firstly, for inviting me on tonight. What happened yesterday was something that was coming for a long time, which we had made clear with the university, but unfortunately we weren't protected once again and we were failed. Yesterday we had a camera on campus stall to combat misinformation on campus, the first time since October 7 that we were making a public appearance. And we wanted to promote respectful discussion, especially with Israeli Apartheid Week happening this month. And we were met with hostility, anti-Semitism. We had abuse, both verbally and physically, with juice thrown at us over our Israeli flag, which ended up hitting myself and my friends as well. And it was just lots of violence with a big crowd.
So you were sitting there with the Israeli flag, trying to raise awareness for anti-Semitism, and a crowd gathers around you. They're all shouting, swearing, dousing you and the flag in juice. What kind of things were they saying? What kind of... I mean, we are post-watershed, but, you know, I'll just keep it relatively clear. What kind of stuff were they saying?
So general comments were made about how we weren't welcome to be on campus, how we must be removed and cancelled, to which, you know, I think shows a bigger issue here, that they can't accept our freedom of speech, and freedom of speech and, you know, safe spaces are clearly only afforded to one group now on universities, because ultimately Jewish students are now silenced. We're too scared. And I've had to take a stand on behalf of my friends and my community, because many are too scared to speak. Lots have gone home, and it's really affecting our studies and the work that we're doing as students. And
is this an isolated incident, or are you seeing more of this? You just say there that Jewish students some of them have gone home. They've had to go home because of the fear.
Yes, so most of my society who was involved in this yesterday has gone home. I myself am considering that. And this is not an isolated incident. And I just want to make that very, very clear that Exeter University has a history of not protecting their Jewish students, despite us telling them that we don't feel protected, we feel unsafe, we don't feel welcome on campus. There has been professors since October 7 last week, denying the rape and sexual violence that was inflicted on Israeli women on October the 7th. Straight after October 7 in November, there was a professor who gave a lecture about how Hamas wasn't a resistance movement, and how they were a resistance movement, not a terrorist organisation. Yeah. Sorry. And I think there's a clear correlation here between what's being taught to these students at Exeter and then the anti-Semitism that we're faced with. And ultimately, I think everybody needs to be asking the question to what the University of Exeter is teaching their students on Zionism. Absolutely. Is it balanced? And are these students being educated to hate? Because that's exactly what we're feeling at the moment.
It is no anti-Semitism and radicalisation and extremism is categorically no longer a fringe issue. It is unfortunately a mainstream thing that is coursing through younger people's lives, it's coursing through academia, it's clearly coursing through aspects of our civil service in some regards as well, and I would argue, well, it's coursing through a kebab shop in Bradford, which I think when it happens, I think you know it's absolutely bonkers, don't you? But thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show, and I do hope that you take care. All right, all the best. A spokesperson for the University of Exeter said, "We are meeting with those involved to ensure that they are receiving the appropriate support and have launched an immediate investigation. The university is committed to eradicating any instances of discrimination and harassment and encourage anyone who may experience any such behaviour to report it immediately." It'll be fascinating to see what they do about the lecturer, won't it? Anyway, let's get the thoughts of my panel now. I've got former UKIP and Deputy Chair and political commentator Suzanne Evans. I've also got Lord Bailey and, of course, ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Larzer. Suzanne, is extremism and radicalisation now no longer a fringe issue? It should not be treated as such.
I think what we've had, haven't we, has been several decades now of a kind of appeasement of this kind of issue. Not just appeasement, it's been enabled, really, because the police have not cracked down on it, they've not done anything about it. So I keep saying that very first hate march after the October the 7th attacks in London, it was obvious what was happening there. I still can't get my head around the fact that you had more Jewish people murdered than at any time since the Holocaust, and just a few days later there were people out supporting the aggressors, and the police did nothing about it. So if you get away with something like that, then, of course, you've got a licence, in a sense, to ratchet things up, and it becomes more and more extreme. And the appalling scenes that we've just seen around that shop in Bradford, I mean, for goodness sake, these people have lost their minds over a can of Coke.
Yeah, over a can of Coke. Sean, I think it's a long list, but one of the most disturbing things that I saw there was those two younger lads talking about how, all right, they're Muslim first, not British. Well, I suppose maybe that's a religious thing, but they're saying that, you know, they can live in Britain and hate the people around them. I don't think that's uncommon, that view.
The problem we've had is we have this liberal view of the world. So you have your nice liberal Westerner, southerner, you know, living down here in the southern country, you think, you know, a few weeks around us, a few glasses of Chardonnay, and of course they'll abandon their, you know, heartfelt views and become liberals like us. That isn't what happens. And then on top of that, you've had certain publications legitimise these people, so they now are legitimate. Means they can do as they want. They can have platforms to talk about how they want to see the world change, our world change. Yep. And away they go, and then you see it manifest itself in action. So I remember many moons ago when those students attacked CCHQ, many a Labour a politician lauded that, but that's how you get to where we are now. Lawlessness, and people are basically saying, if I don't agree with you, if you're not with me, you're against me, and it gives me the right to attack you, we've got to challenge that.
It looks as though, Matthew, the head of diversity at the Department for Work and Pensions is on the stump for George Galloway.
Well, I mean, diversity and inclusion, I suspect, but not very inclusive there of the 60% of people in Rochdale who didn't vote for George Galloway. I mean, that is, you know, there are clear rules in the civil service about political involvement, and
they're not enforced.
Well, they should certainly be enforced, and I would expect them to be enforced.
I bet you
in that case.
The other way round, he'd have got a hammering.
Yeah, I mean I'll tell you what I found. I mean, they're all disturbing, but I think the Bradford clip is, to me, especially disturbing because it's the absolute definition of mob rule. It's if you don't agree with you. Now, it doesn't matter what it is. It's actually not about the issue. It's about the fact that if anybody in this country, whatever their background, thinks that you can persuade somebody who, frankly, does agree with him because he's got a Free Palestine sticker and a thing, but, you know, it is literally... And I don't know, where are the police?
It's because, you know, I'll tell you where the police are. The police are terrified of being tried in a newspaper. And what happens, and I said it before and I say it again, the left-wing newspapers do much better character assassination, and they'll just assassinate...
Well, what worries me is if we don't nip this in the bud, anybody... I mean, what if there's somebody in the community who doesn't want to display a Free Palestine sticker? We need a proper conversation with the Muslim community because we cannot have behaviour like that, which is Muslim on Muslim there, and it's clearly completely wrong.
I'll tell you what it is. It's insane. If you find yourself, by the way, ever thinking about whether or not you're going to walk down to a Tesco's and shout at a Jewish avocado, just look in the mirror. Anyway, coming up, Jerry Halliwell's husband, Christian Horner, speaks out for the first time after his female accuser is apparently suspended by Red Bull. Not a great look. And next, new and exclusive polling on what the public really thinks about Jeremy Hunt, Rachel Reeves, and when the general election should be held. Expert pollster Matt Goodwin is also here with unrivaled analysis. It's a big exclusive, and it's next.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Well, we've been a constitutional monarchy since the late 17th century, and of course part of that deal is that the monarch, or indeed the close immediate royal family, should not interfere with politics that in any way could be seen to affect individual parties. Now, perhaps one of the most classic cases in the 20th century was Edward VIII, who during his brief reign went down to Merthyr Tydfil in South Wales, met thousands of people who'd lost their jobs in the steel industry. In fact, he shook so many hands in the end He had to change and shake with his left hand, and he said something must be done to get these people jobs. It was taken as a direct assault on the Conservative government of the day. And we could go on to Edward Heath, as many saw it, using the Queen to get us to join the common market, and things the Queen said during the referendum on Scottish separation. And we could, of course, talk about King Charles, who as Prince of Wales endlessly talked about climate change and net zero. But the intervention overnight from Prince William, I think, is the most direct political piece of interference that has international and global implications that I almost think we've ever seen. Prince William is saying to Israel, stop what you're doing. Some will see that as being given a free pass to Hamas. Many young people will say, hooray, he's doing the right thing. But whether he's doing the right thing or not, has he gone just too far with this? Should our future king intervene in this way? I don't believe that he should. I think he's making a very big mistake.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News, still to come. Tonight's panel will go through the very first of tomorrow's front pages. But right now, we have got exclusive polling conducted after Jeremy Hunt's budget. OK, so this is finally now a big exclusive for you. Here are the results, all right? Are we heading for a Labour landslide? Sir Keir Starmer's party are at 46% in voting intention. Conservatives on 18%. Reform are up to 13%. The Lib Dems on 10%. Crucially, under half of 2019 Tory voters plan to vote for them again at the next election. When asked, who do you trust more to cut taxes? 15% said Jeremy Hunt. 17% said Rachel Reeves, but a whopping 44% said neither. I'd say the electorate are pretty much on the money there. OK. Next, who do you trust more to strengthen the economy over the long term? It's a big one, this. A Conservative government with Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, 16%. A Labour government with Chancellor Rachel Reeves, 26%. None of the above, though. 35%. Tell you what, none of the above's doing well tonight. And finally, we can see that Brits are fast running out of patience. 37% want a general election as soon as possible. OK? So that's before May this year. So literally, like now, really. People want a general election now. 37% of people. The next most popular answer was autumn this year, chosen by 16%. 30% of people remain undecided. I do beg the question how you can be undecided to when you want a general election. But anyway, expert pollster and academic Matt Goodwin joins me now. Matt, look, thank you very, very much. What are the key findings of that series of polls
Patrick,
there?
good to be with you.
Right,
well, the key findings, as you say, I mean, we've got this enormous disillusionment out there in the country. It's not that there's mass enthusiasm for the Labour Party, Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. What we've got are lots of voters out there saying, look, I don't know who's going to fix this economy. I don't know who's going to reduce taxes. And I think this is really hinting at something bigger, Patrick. I think there's quite a lot of disillusionment out there with this new consensus in British politics. High tax, big state, mass immigration, low growth. And voters, I think, are looking at Westminster and saying nobody's got the answer.
More people think that Rachel Reeves is likely to cut tax than Jeremy Hunt. I mean, that is remarkable. What a state of affairs we are in at the moment, surely.
Well, indeed, but it also shows just how hemmed in the two parties are. I mean, they don't have much room for manoeuvre. We've got massive amounts of national debt. We're now in recession. We've got very low rates of growth. Voters aren't stupid. I think they're looking at the reality and they're saying, look, actually, I don't think the Conservatives, who have already brought us, don't forget, to the highest tax burden for decades, are going to sort of bring about some sort of miraculous recovery. And so, Labour's partly picking up a bit of the advantage on that. Notice on that question about economic growth, though, Patrick, Labour's lead is bigger on that question. And this is what we see in other polls nationally. Labour ahead of the Conservatives on managing the economy, dealing with unemployment, dealing with inequality. And this, again, is a reflection not of the fact that people love Keir Starmer, because, to be honest, they don't. It's a reflection of the way in which they are completely fed up with the incumbent Conservative government.
You asked them about voting intention there, and it was at 47% for Labour. 47%. Big.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is reflected in other polling. The Labour Party is enjoying leads it's not really had since the 1990s. We've got the Conservatives on 18% this week. YouGov just had them on 20%. We're seeing lows that we've never really seen before. The old joke among pollsters, Patrick, was that the Conservative vote would never go below 30%, because that's when you're getting to pensioners and people in care homes who are pro-Conservative but don't really know much about what's going on out there in the country. And what we're seeing instead is actually this Conservative vote doesn't appear to have a floor to it, Patrick. Yeah. Sliding downwards.
I mean, so it does indicate, does it indicate that the Tories have lost the pensioners?
Well, I mean, they've lost almost all of their core voters. When you're on 18-20%, you're pretty much losing, the vast majority of people who voted for you at the last election, those working class voters in the Red Wall. Patrick, on these numbers, every seat in the Red Wall goes back to the Labour Party. On these numbers, the Conservatives are reduced to less than 100 seats, or fewer than 100 seats in the House of Commons. This would be, a wipeout event. Now, of course, the polls will narrow as we go into the election, right? We will see the polls narrow a bit. But, you've got to ask yourself a question. If the Conservatives aren't seen as a competent manager of the economy, if they're not seen as a competent manager of immigration, if they're not seen as a competent manager of the NHS, all the big issues in British politics, then why will voters go back to them? And I think that's the nightmare question for Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I don't think people... Well, I could be wrong about this, but my impression is I don't think people necessarily think that the Labour Party are going to be massively competent at this stuff. The question is, are they going to be more competent than the Tories? And then we end up in this situation. Matt, can I just say a massive thank you, not just for all that data, but for coming on at this time of night and picking through it. I know our viewers and listeners really appreciate it. So it's Matt Goodwin there. Thank you very, very much, Professor Matt Goodwin. Right, OK, look, coming up, Red Bull's Christian Horner, he fires back at the media for their treatment of him and his wife, Spice Girl, Jerry Halliwell.
The intrusion on my family is now enough.
OK, we will have the very latest on that whole sorry saga. But right now, though, well, in just a second or two anyway, it's all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. And, as I understand it, we might have a little bit of breaking news for you, but I'll see you in a tick.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. A few showers and a touch of frost for some of us tonight, then a mostly fine day tomorrow. At the moment, the UK is sandwiched in between low pressure around the Bay of Biscay and high pressure across Scandinavia, leading to a strengthening southeasterly flow. Through the night, we are going to see a few showers, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland. Also, some showery outbreaks for northeast England and eastern parts of Scotland. Could be a little bit of sleet or snow over the higher ground here. Elsewhere, a mostly dry picture with some clear skies, particularly towards the south of England, also western Scotland, under which we could see a touch of frost first thing on Friday morning in any sheltered rural spots. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow then, any showery outbreaks across northern areas will largely die out. So for much of the country, it will be a dry picture by the afternoon with a decent amount of sunshine across much of England, Wales and also western parts of Scotland. But that southeasterly wind will be bringing in some cloud, which is likely to linger linger across eastern northeastern parts, and a significant wind chill will make it feel pretty cold under that cloud too. Looking ahead to the weekend, and after a dry start for most on Saturday, a weather system pushing its way up from the southwest will lead to a fairly wet story for many of us as we go through the weekend. The rain likely to be heaviest and most frequent across southern areas. Further north, it's probably going to be a bit patchier, a bit more showery, and mostly light too. Temperatures picking up on Saturday, dropping down again.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Okay, welcome along. I've got tomorrow's news tonight now in our paper review. Yeah, OK, so the Metro, runaway aristocrats court claim. I did nothing but show my baby love. This is the mother who was on the run, denying killing her daughter. It was that case that gripped the nation for... it's quite a while they were missing, actually, wasn't it? Unfortunately, that baby was found dead inside a little bag in a shed. The Daily Telegraph, London is now a no-go zone for Jews. Macron also saying that we must step in for Ukraine. The Labour and Tories refuse to explain UK's spending cuts before 2024 election. That's nice of them, isn't it? The Guardian, I've got a picture of a dog that looks like it's about to walk into a shop and has to speak to the manager. US to build port on shore of Gaza to allow aid deliveries as well. And The Sun, will be coming back to this, Red Bullish. Bid to end sext scandal. Yeah, we'll be talking about Christian Horner and, of course, his wife, the Spice Girl, Geri Halliwell, very, very shortly. So, look, I am obviously joined by my wonderful panel, and tonight I've got former UKIP Deputy Chair and political commentator Suzanne Evans, Conservative peer Lord Bailey and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. But I've got some breaking news for you. So, breaking tonight... A US judge has ordered the Department of Homeland Security to hand over Prince Harry's immigration papers for him to review while he decides whether to make them public. In his tell-all memoir, Spare, the Duke of Sussex made several admissions of drug use, which begs the question, did he lie on his visa application to enter the United States? Well, foreign policy analyst, director of the Heritage Foundation, and crucially, one of the men who has brought this court case, is Niall Gardner, and he joins me now. Niall, thank you very much. Look, what's happened today, then? What's this breaking news?
Patrick, many thanks for having me on the show today. And very significant developments here in Washington. A federal judge ordered the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to hand over Prince Harry's immigration records to the judge for his review under what is known as in-camera review. This is a game changer here. From our point of view, this is a very encouraging, positive development. The judge has ordered the handover of those documents within 2 weeks. March 21st is the deadline. And then the judge will review exactly what is inside Prince Harry's immigration records. So the stakes are very high here. The Biden administration fought tooth and nail against handing over these documents. So this is a very significant development. And it's certainly our hope that ultimately Prince Harry's immigration records will be released to the American people for their review.
So, Niall, the judge has demanded to see what Harry wrote on his visa application, basically, yeah?
Correct. Yeah, that's right. The judge will have full access to the complete Prince Harry immigration.
And if that says things along the lines of, I've never taken drugs or used drugs or anything, and that is a lie, right, then what could happen next?
Yeah, so under the hypothetical situation whereby it is revealed that Prince Harry lied, that is undoubtedly a criminal offence. There are very severe penalties for that in the United States, and I think it's very likely then that the federal judge would release the records to the American people. I do think that if you have a case of someone lying on an immigration application, that's a very serious offence, and in some cases that results in deportation. So the stakes are incredibly high here. But that of course, a hypothetical situation. Let's see what's in those records that the American people see for themselves.
And we'll know in about 2 weeks' time. Look, Niall, thank you, and thank you for keeping us and our audience here right up to date with the latest. That is the breaking news that a judge has now demanded to see Prince Harry's visa application amidst this drug issue, allegedly, anyway. Now, thank you very much. Right, OK, well, from one potential scandal to another one, a shocking new twist to a global scandal. Christian Horner's sexed accuser has been suspended. So this is the Red Bull employee who remains anonymous, accused the husband of Geri Halliwell of sending her a series of sexually suggestive text messages. The Sun reports the woman has high-powered lawyers involved, and today she's been told to stay home while internal inquiries continue. At a press conference in Saudi Arabia earlier, Horner was asked to comment on the matter. Here it is.
The reality is that there was a grievance that was raised. It was dealt with in the most professional manner. As far as I'm concerned, as far as Red Bull is concerned, we move on and we look to the future.
Suzanne, is this a bad look, do you think?
It's bad. I don't really think Red Bull had any other choice, to be honest, Patrick. I mean, what's happened here is there were these allegations made. There was an internal inquiry. Christian Horner was exonerated, basically. But now what's happened is hundreds of messages, sexually suggestive messages, have been sent anonymously to Red Bull employees, to the press, to all kinds of people, completely opening the whole thing up again. I don't think Red Bull have got any choice, I'm afraid. It's a sorry, sad story, but if I was advising them, if I was their PR consultant, I think I'd have to suggest they do exactly what they've done.
Sure.
I think there's a number of issues here. Firstly, is these new messages that have been released, are they real? We've not seen them. We haven't had them verified. They used a lawyer to conduct an internal process, which they said was done very professionally. It certainly took a long time. It's a very high-powered lawyer. He was exonerated. It's interesting that Christian Horner has stuck to his guns.
And his wife stuck to him as well.
Yeah, but I wonder if he seems very certain in his innocence, and he's stuck to his guns. That's interesting. Red Bull look to be leaning his way, because to suspend a member of staff without evidence to do that would be very, very risky legally, so they must be confident in their position to suspend him, because if they haven't, they're in a world of pain. They'll be in a serious world of pain. So let's see. Ultimately, we will not know how this is going to go until it's all out in the open, till more of it comes out in the open. We need to see these texts.
Her on full pay. Yeah. So it's not as though she's losing out. She's not been named.
But let's be clear, she's lodged a grievance and then she's been suspended. She will have a strong legal grounds for all manner of claims if they're not correct.
If they're not correct. And I mean, it would be a massive, massive controversy, wouldn't it? Matthew, quickly, your view on this?
Yeah, so look, I mean, Formula One always strikes me as having a sort of rather boys and their toys, masculine, macho environment. I think it's classic techniques, what you don't do, which is you don't discourage people from coming forward by, even if their claims are not proven to be founded, you don't sort of, punish the whistleblower. So it's not textbook stuff.
All right, good stuff. Now, look, I just want to squeeze in another story for you. So it's a new storyline in the soap opera Hollyoaks, and it's facing massive backlash. So what you're about to see is being acted, anyway, is a 12-year-old girl confiding in a trans adult about her own gender confusion. Watch.
I'm a boy, but my body's all wrong, and how am I supposed to tell my parents that?
I'll help you in whatever way I can.
You can't move on with your life until you've told the people you love who you truly are. That is, if you're sure.
I'm so sure.
Well, then once you've taken the first step, you can start actually being who you truly are. It's the best feeling in the world.
Matthew, weird or okay?
It's incredibly badly acted. Is my first observation. Look, I think on the edge, I would say. I mean, I think it's perfectly appropriate to have a conversation, but clearly, I'm just about to be pounced on.
I think Sean.
I'm sorry. That's well beyond the pale. Firstly, in the real world, why do Hollyoaks feel the need to do this? Why do we keep putting our children in situations and completely taking their parents out of it? If a child was in that position, the first response would be to talk to their parents and get a professional involved.
Well, they might not feel they're able to talk. Children can't always talk to their parents.
Yeah, but that's the point. You are legally responsible for your child. They should be brought to you and some professional to speak to. Yes. That's the first thing. But there's no balance.
It starts okay by saying, I'll give you the support you need, and then, but obviously then saying that she's basically going to hold her hand while she definitely goes down one route.
Breaks every safeguarding rule.
Yes.
It really does, because here we are, cutting the parents out completely, telling a young child to be who you truly think you are. Who the heck knows who they truly are at that age? It's insane.
I think it's fine to have the conversation. I think the dialogue is clunky and takes us down the wrong direction.
Trans propaganda being rammed down the throats of young people. It's not going to end well.
You can't have
be a disaster for young people.
You cannot have these conversations without parents. I'm sorry. And what we'll see in the years to come, there'll be a litany of legal cases.
But we have seen how important over the years soaps are at changing public attitudes.
Who were forced down a route, without proper support, made serious changes to their physical self, not to mention their mental self, and then woke up one morning for, actually, I was forced this way.
You are right there, Matthew. In times gone by, soaps, they were watched by more people, I suppose you could say, but soaps have had some quite very iconic moments for society.
Absolutely. I mean, the Hollyoaks' predecessor programme, Brookside, and the Lesbian Kiss was absolutely totemic.
Absolutely.
Not creepy. Not breaking safeguarding rules.
No,
we're going to put a pin in it. We're going to as good as this conversation is. Coming up, should the Science Secretary Michelle Donovan resign? Yes. After the taxpayer is made to foot her £15,000 legal damages bill. More on that when we do tonight's greatest Britain and Union jackass. And, of course, we'll have more front pages for you. Stay tuned.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Get this right, we all know by now, don't we, that so many NHS workers are abused by people that they're trying to help. We'll all agree that that is pretty damn disgraceful, but what do we do about it? Because now some London hospitals are looking at whether or not they should be able to ban people that do this for a year from those hospital facilities. Is that the way forward? Daniel, do you like this? No abuse, no excuse, that is the campaign?
There's no other choice for most people. It's either the NHS or nothing. And if you're going to take that monopolistic power, then you need, I think, you have responsibilities towards people. You can't cut them off. So there are ways in which, of course, you can bring criminal charges against them. If they commit a criminal offence, that's fine. They might even be locked up in jail. But what you can't do is cut off health services because you're the only supplier.
Well, yes, I think you can cut it off and you should cut it off. London is very different from everywhere else, and it goes back to a conversation about immigration. The majority of nurses in London are either African or Filipino, and it harks back to their nature and their culture. When you're younger, your parents look after you. When you're older, you look after them. They don't go into homes. So there's a way that a threshold of tolerance they have that is above and beyond most people. So, because I found like when I was younger, most of the nurses were white. Now they work in hospitals in Ascot and Somerset. London is the war zone. I have seen horrific things happen to nurses, and they stay. They show up for work. There's a protection they are owed, beyond owed. And if you abuse something that's offered to you as a part of your citizenship, there should be a penalty for that. For the same reason,
you're obliged to use it. There's no offer involved in the NHS.
But there is an offer, because at the end of the day, like you figure out how to get money and go private. So just because you've created something that gives you... No, it's easy. If it's easy...
That's an impossible solution.
They've created something that's kind and easy and beneficial to all, indeed. But it's a good thing for all. Do not abuse it. That simple.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. More front pages for you now. Daily Express. Brexit is a great British success story worth billions. This is Kemi Badenoch. Brexit has reignited the UK's trade standing in global markets worth hundreds of billions of pounds. I wonder, I haven't obviously seen the inside of that story yet. I imagine it might have something to do with what we're about to do with India.
It's going to win the Booker Prize for fiction.
We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, The Times. Another dog. There we go, good. Crufts is happening. Doctors to track patients' step counts on NHS app. Unrelated stories, of course. Health Secretary says technology at the heart of a £3.4 billion plan to get sick Britons back to work. Yeah, look, nothing will get sick Britons back to work if they're faking it, all right? We just need to be honest about that. Let's go to the Daily Mail. Don't leave our country defenceless. Not for decades has the world felt so dangerous. And at the top there, we recognise this face, Nana Queer, our very own. She was actually speaking about this on our show earlier on, but yeah, she has done the North Face quiz. If you want to get 20% off a North Face jacket, you have to take a white privilege test. The Mirror, pensions, pinchers. Hunt's £8 billion stealth tax will hammer the elderly. We've covered that. And here we go. The Independent. So, Britain's 50 most influential women, OK? There we are, right. Now, tomorrow is International Women's Day, and the Independent newspaper has named its annual list of 50 most influential women. On the front page, we've got Floella Benjamin, Anna Whitehouse, Amy Dowden, Penny Mordaunt, Maggie Alfonsi and Kate Garraway. But here's another couple of eye-watering admissions. Partygate inquisitor and now Labour Chief of Staff Sue Gray, the LBC presenter and Tory attack dog, Carol Vorderman. Sean, I won't start with you. Suzanne, how do you feel about the women on this list?
Well, actually, I'm going to steal Matthew's line because he said this earlier. There's no business women here. So that's a bit of a disappointment. Good to see Kemi Badenoch in at number 20.
We're very close to business now in Labour. We like to look out for business. Very pleased to see Kemi Badenoch there. Yeah. Also very pleased to see my girly crush, Gillian Anderson there, my fellow... And can I get Floella Benjamin makes the front page. My first ever crush when she was on Play School.
You've also, of course, got the kind of token trans woman. Munro Bergdorf is in there as well. So, once again, this list isn't really about women.
Right, OK, fine. Sean, I will go to you now. Carol Vorderman's on that.
Yeah. My favourite on here is Jo Hamilton. She was pivotal in unrooting what's happening with the post office debacle. I thought that for many people will be very important. Floella Benjamin, she has to get a shout-out. Baroness Benjamin, as I know her, is so wonderful. She's one of the most respected peers.
Am I going to get to meet her now, Sean? You're going to take me to meet her?
I will arrange that for you. She's more wonderful than you might imagine. And she's really led on the scandal around the Windrush compensation.
Are either
and I
of you
respect
young
her for
enough
that.
to remember her on Place?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Look, I'm just going to whiz it on.
That's why I first fell in love with her.
Oh, God. Well,
Revelations.
OK, now. I want to focus on a story that's in the Times today, OK, about a failed cancellation attempt against one of the most famous photographs of the 20th century. So, it's actually this iconic image, OK, there we go, this iconic image showing an embrace between a sailor and a nurse on the day New York City celebrated the end of the Second World War. We all know this picture, very famous picture. But a junior official in the US government said it would be banned because apparently it's a non-consensual kiss. The actual bloke in the photo said in 2012, when I saw the nurse, I grabbed her and I kissed her. That's a statue of it, by the way. That's not them. That'd be weird, wouldn't it? Anyway, and the woman has previously said, it wasn't my choice to be kissed. The guy just came over and kissed and grabbed me. But it turns out the photo won't be banned thanks to an intervention from the US Veterans Society. I mean, look, Sean, if you can't kiss a woman when you've won a war, you know...
I've got to say, you know me, I hate cancel culture. I think it's a sneaky way of changing people's politics, but it's never been right to just stick your tongue down someone's throat.
Consent is consent, even on a victory day.
Even in the 50s. So I'm not... banning the picture would have achieved nothing, but let's be clear, you can't just stick your tongue down people's throats.
Agreed.
I think one of the big points of this is, look, I am not... Because it's not obvious, immediately obvious, this is non-consensual, right? So I think most people would look at it, it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't, I wouldn't say it promotes the...
And neither of them are here to ask in more detail than we've already done. They stated because they both...
When I see that picture, I see a couple. That's what I
have to say, I didn't realise until I heard this story that they weren't a couple, actually.
Exactly. So I suppose it's that question mark about like, how dangerous to the fabric of society is it really, this picture, but...
But we can't go cancelling art.
Yeah.
No, you certainly can't.
Is a not wanted kiss art?
No, but the picture is. The picture is.
Well, the pictures definitely are. And it is iconic, so yes, of course it can't be bad.
It's time now for today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass.
Right.
I forgot
OK, Suzanne, who's your Greatest Britain?
My Greatest Britain is a lady called Amy Poll. She's disabled. She uses a wheelchair. She made a video that I saw on Facebook about trying to charge her electric car and how impossible it was because, well, it's just not accessible.
We've got it. We've got the video. Got the video.
I just pulled up to charge my car, but I can't. Unsuitable parking arrangements, meaning that I either can't go in and then get out the car, or I leave my car and then come back and there's another car parked next to it and I'm stuck. So solutions need to be found and EV chargers need to be made more accessible to people with access needs.
I think that's great. You know,
but she should be on the list.
So she should. Disabled people so often come last when you're talking about infrastructure and stuff like that. The other thing I really like about her is I had a look at her Instagram feed. She's in a wheelchair, she's disabled, but my goodness, she is so full of life and she enjoys it to the full, and that was great to see.
Good start to the Greatest Britain, Sean.
My Greatest Britain's our very own Eamon Holmes, who's been documenting his recovery from surgery he's had on a bad back. Men of a certain vintage will tell you what a bad back really feels like and how debilitating it is. But more importantly, it's his doggedness, is his determination to make himself well. And as a country that often we have quite low levels of health, this attitude to your health and recovery can be very inspiring to people who need a little boost.
You know what, as well? The time he gets up every morning and all of this, I mean, it is no mean feat, seriously.
No.
I mean, years and years, decades of breakfast telly.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right, OK, all right, go on.
And mine are the students at Exeter University who were set upon, as we've seen, the Jewish students, mobbed by the pro-Palestinian protesters. That was not a debate, it was a mob.
Right, I'm actually really struggling with this one. I've gone for Eamon Holmes, but that's because I'm worried he'll attack me if I don't do that. All of them could have won. All of them could have won. Right, now we're gonna have to rattle through this. Union Jackass, go on.
So Archbishop of Canterbury for being too woke, too left-wing and too out of touch with most of the Church of England's...
Don't make him press his panic alarm. All right.
The BBC for portraying Milton Keynes as some kind of dump. Not everywhere is the home counties or London. Much of this country is beautiful and it's unfair to talk about Milton Keynes that way. The people there are furious and maybe...
Sorry, what did they say about Milton?
They said it was a dump and it was full of people...
They taking food from dumpsters and all sorts. Ironically, it was filmed in London, unbelievably.
The best ever line I wrote in a script when I was at the BBC was about Milton Keynes. It was Milton Keynes was the future once.
Yes.
It was when David Cameron failed to call Gordon failed to call an election. And concrete cows. Poor Milton Keynes. Mine is University Secretary Michelle Donnellan for making us all fork out to pay for her rant against academics, her false rant.
15 grand, I think it was, wasn't it?
Worth every penny.
OK.
Let's not double it.
Don't need the taxpayer doing more work for us, Sean. Right, OK, today's Union Jackass is Justin Welby.
I still haven't won.
It's got to be. I went off at him at the top of the 9, and I think there's going to be more about him in the news. Guys, that was brilliant. Thank you very, very much. I really, really enjoyed tonight's show. I know I say it every night, but I really mean it this time. Thank you.
We'll tell the others.
Thank you to everybody. Feel free. Thank you to everybody who's been watching and tuning in and listening. Make sure that you go back and check it all out on YouTube as well. If you missed anything, it's Headliners next. I'll see you tomorrow at 9.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. A few showers and a touch of frost for some of us tonight, then a mostly fine day tomorrow. At the moment, the UK is sandwiched in between low pressure around the Bay of Biscay and high pressure across Scandinavia, leading to a strengthening southeasterly flow. Through the night, we are going to see a few showers, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland. Also, some showery outbreaks for northeast England and eastern parts of Scotland. Could be a little bit of sleet or snow over the higher ground here. here. Elsewhere, a mostly dry picture with some clear skies, particularly towards the south of England, also western Scotland, under which we could see a touch of frost first thing on Friday morning in any sheltered rural spots. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow then, any showery outbreaks across northern areas will largely die out, so for much of the country it will be a dry picture by the afternoon, with a decent amount of sunshine across much of England, Wales and also western parts of Scotland, but that southeasterly wind will be bringing in some cloud which is likely to linger across eastern northeastern parts, and a significant wind chill will make it feel pretty cold under that cloud too. Looking ahead to the weekend, and after a dry start for most on Saturday, a weather system pushing its way up from the southwest will lead to a fairly wet story for many of us as we go through the weekend. The rain likely to be heaviest and most frequent across southern areas. Further north it's probably going to be a bit patchier, a bit more showery and mostly light too. Temperatures picking up on Saturday, dropping down again.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
You're now in exile. I imagine it wouldn't be safe for you to go back to Russia. Can I ask you if you feel safe personally, and what do you think can be done to remove Putin, or is he going to be there for as long as he wants?
I think that is, of course, fundamental question. It is there should be pressure inside Russia and outside. Inside Russia right now, it's impossible because Putin put all leaders in jail and some of us just abroad. You know, just two were already killed. Mr. Nemtsov, Boris Nemtsov, my friend, my collaborator on my party, was killed on the walls on Kremlin. Alexei Navalny was killed in jail and in the camp. And that is, the people live in fear to identify themselves as protesters, to identify themselves as against Putin's regime, etc. That's why today there is no chance for opposition to rise inside Russia. But outside, of course, this war against Ukraine, that is the fundamental issue for all foreign leaders. And in fact, just support of Ukraine and to